Okay, well, thank you for attending our session titled Empowering Leaders and Staff to Lead Large-Scale Organizational Change. During the session, you'll hear from the Partnership for Public Service and 18F on how leadership in government requires a unique set of skills and competencies using various leadership models and frameworks. We will also discuss real-life examples throughout the session. Following the presentations, there will be time for questions and answers from the audience. Let's begin with Wanda King from the Partnership for Public Service.
All right, thank you, Rick. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Wanda King, one of the senior managers at the Partnership for Public Service, and thrilled to share with you something that we are really excited about at the partnership, and it is our public service leadership model. We call it the Standard for Effective Federal Leadership, and we crafted this particular model because there really wasn't anything that already in existence that really addressed what competencies and sub-competencies that leaders within the federal government would need to have in order to be successful in their positions. Next slide. In the chat box under my name, you'll see a link to a video, and I encourage you to check out that video at a later date that kind of explains an overview of the model. So please check it out, but we're going to go through it. I'll just explain to you what's in that presentation. So we can go to the next slide. Now, the model itself was created with a lot of support, not only internal partnership public service staff, but we created a leadership advisory council. And on the screen, you'll see some of the folks who were wonderful in working with. So you see Amy Edmondson, Bernie Banks, Bob McDonald, Charlie Bolden, and all of the others listed there. Who worked on creating this model that we feel very strongly about that really does address, again, those competencies that federal leaders need to have. We worked on it for over a year and a half or so, and officially launched not only the model, but also a leadership assessment that goes along with it. It's a 360-degree leadership tool that you can use to find out where you stand in these key competencies and sub-competencies. So again, we're really proud of it. We've been rolling it out for the last year and really incorporating it into just about everything that we do in terms of leadership development at the partnership. Next slide. Briefly, I want to go through the different competencies, and there are 4 of them. At the top, becoming self-aware. The second one is engaging others. At the bottom, you'll see it's leading change. And the 4th one is achieving results. The important thing to remember is that at the center of this model is stewardship of public trust and commitment to public good. And that's what makes this model different from other types of leadership models that you may have encountered in other types of training or other types of organizations presenting leadership development to individuals. So I want to start next slide, with the whole idea of that centerpiece, the stewardship of public trust and the commitment to public good. So if we go to the next slide, let's talk about stewardship of public service. Now, in terms of stewardship, we define that as federal leaders representing the American people and being held to the highest standard. Some of those indicators of stewardship, including being selfless, it has a multiplying effect, and just acknowledging that the cause is bigger than any one individual. Next, when we go to this notion of commitment to public good, federal leaders achieve expansive agency missions that promote the general welfare of the community, the society, and everyone associated with the work that we do. Some of those indicators of the commitment to public good or the mission commitment include the fact that the federal government is nonpartisan, service-oriented, and focused on long-term outcomes. Now I'll go through each of the key components and the subcomponents that go along with it. Next slide. These are the leadership competencies, those 4 that I described briefly, at least showing you on the outer edge. But under each of these leadership competencies, we've identified sub-competencies, and you can see them listed on the screen. And for anyone who's not able to see, I'll just quickly review them. Under becoming self-aware, we have self-reflection, authenticity, integrity, emotional intelligence, and continuous learning. Under engaging others, we have relationship building, empowering others, conflict management, collaboration, diversity, equity, inclusion, and now we're adding to it accessibility. Under leading change, vision setting, influence, innovation and creativity, embracing risk and uncertainty, and adaptability. And lastly, achieving results, accountability, evidence-based decision-making, systems thinking, tech savviness, and customer service. And all of these are key components and subcomponents that we are using in the partnership for public service with a lot of our clients now. We framed, for example, we're working with the White House Leadership Development Program right now, and we framed the entire year around these different key competencies and sub-competencies. And so far it's going great. And the leaders are finding that actually going through each of these different sub-competencies really does help out. If you want to go ahead, you can go forward. If you want to learn more about the public service leadership model, and I encourage you to visit our website, you can go directly to ourpublicservice.org/our-work/public service leadership model. You'll find that video that I referenced earlier, and lots of information and other videos and articles, assessment tools, all kinds of things that we think will be helpful to you as you develop your leadership skills, in particular being able to move forward with the other topics that we're discussing today. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you all. And I'll be happy to answer questions at the end.
Great, thanks Wanda. Hello everyone, I'm Lindsay LaFerrier. I manage the Federal Innovation Portfolio at the Partnership for Public Service. Wanda talked about our perspective on the elements key to effective leadership in government, and now I'm excited to talk to you about our framework for innovation in federal organizations. So right now, as the government strives towards equity, it needs to innovate and embrace change. As all of you know, the status quo won't get us where we need to be. When we set out to develop this innovation framework, we had a hypothesis that may sound familiar to many of you. Our thought was that the environment in federal organizations was almost as important to the success of the innovative ideas as the ideas themselves. In an ideal world, I think we all believe that the recognition that we need to change how government operates would be enough to advance the change needed, but given the complex and layered obstacles to transformational change in government settings, the need and the ideas for change are often not enough to guarantee the success of those ideas. So to determine what differentiated successful innovation in government from unsuccessful, we embarked on interviews across federal agencies looking at all types of innovation, from technology innovation to operational innovation to open innovation. And we sought to identify the common characteristics across organizations where innovation, change, and experimentation were embraced and succeeded. So at the end of this process, we published the 10 characteristics you'll see on the slide here for federal organizations in which innovation thrives. So I'm excited to talk through these with you and hope that they'll be relevant to your work as well. So the first is that innovation succeeds in organizations where there's a prioritization of innovation through leadership support. They have leaders who openly and purposefully support innovative efforts by speaking publicly about the expectations that employees will innovate, embracing change in public forums, and providing the top cover as employees experiment and iterate. They empower employees to be creative, and these organizations have the freedom and resources to innovate in their day-to-day work. When they present ways to improve the work they are closest to, they're given the permission to do so. In these organizations, barriers to effectiveness are removed. There's a concerted effort to identify and remove outdated processes, policies, and technologies that serve as barriers to innovation rather than expecting employees will find their own ways around these barriers. They make small bets on new ideas, iterate, and learn from failure. Innovative organizations pursue small bets on new ideas by encouraging experimentation and learning from failure, demonstrating how to test, fail, learn, and improve without stakes so high that any failure is unacceptable. These organizations scale successful initiatives and projects building on what works. They establish processes for assessing the success of projects and then turn successful innovative ideas and projects into scalable, sustainable, and effective long-term initiatives. They are environments that value external expertise, creative thinking, and diversity of thought. Teams are created and set up to draw on skills and expertise from the customers and end users, other departments, agencies, academia, and other sectors, and embrace different perspectives. In these organizations, customer experience is at the center of their work. They focus on the real needs of customers and end users to drive innovations and the organization's operations. They align innovative efforts with strategic goals to help advance the organization's greatest priorities and ensure that the efforts have long-term support. Innovation efforts are not special projects on the side. They tie directly to the mission and strategic goals of the agency. These organizations demonstrate strong business practices. They commit to creating strong management and operational underpinnings that are critical to the success of any product or effort. Innovation projects are not different in that way. And finally, they create a culture of change, recognizing that as the needs of the public are quickly changing, so too do organizations need to prepare to change with them. So these organizations have invested in creating environments where employees have a mentality that is open and ready to navigate change. So over the last year plus, we've seen that there are powerful ideas in government and the public sector for changing and improving how service is delivered to the public. And our hope is that we can invest in building organizations that have these characteristics. More of those transformative ideas would be set up to succeed. So I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Rick, who will talk about one of the other programs we're running at the partnership.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. My name is Rick Kempinski, and I'm a senior manager on the Federal Workforce Programs team at the Partnership for Public Service. In my role, I oversee our federal internship and fellowship portfolio, and I'm here today to specifically talk about the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative, or CTI. Launched in 2019, the CTI program is a cross-sector employment opportunity for recent graduates seeking entry-level work experience in the public and private sectors. Candidates for the program will be graduating from an undergraduate or graduate academic institution studying cybersecurity or cybersecurity-related fields such as computer science, information technology, engineering, or math. The program has three main objectives. The first one is to address the talent deficiency that exists across the United States. As many of you know, there are more than 500,000 jobs going unfilled across the country in public and private sectors. Number two, to provide an opportunity for entry-level talent to gain valuable work experience in both the public and private sectors and to develop future cybersecurity leaders. And the third objective is to support candidates with another crisis in America, the student loan debt. Our corporate partners have agreed to provide student loan assistance up to $75,000 for those participants who are selected to work at their company after their time in the federal government. So we have several key stakeholders to support the program. First, we have our corporate partners, MasterCard, Microsoft, and Workday. Next, we have our nearly dozen participating federal agencies listed here on this slide. In addition, we have our technical partner, CyberVista, who provides a technical assessment at the beginning of the program and then works with the individual participants throughout their time in the federal government to strengthen their technical skills along the NICE framework. Finally, the Partnership for Public Service is the operating partner and manages the recruitment, selection, and placement processes for the candidates, as well as the leadership development and mentorship programs that we'll discuss shortly. So just a quick overview of the program. Eligible candidates from US colleges and universities will apply to the online application between August and November of their graduating academic year. Once the application closes in November, the Partnership for Public Service conducts a basic eligibility review. Then, along with volunteer subject matter experts, reviews application materials and conducts interviews with the semi-finalists. Finally, a diverse pool of finalists is selected and sent to the federal agencies to assess and choose their top candidates, followed by a matching process facilitated by the partnership to determine final placements. The CTI participants will spend 2 years getting on-the-job training with one of our participating federal agencies while receiving technical and leadership development training. They will also participate in a mentoring program where they're matched with an experienced cybersecurity professional in the public and private sector to help guide them on their future career path. So near the end of their time in public service, CTI participants will be invited to apply to an opportunity with one of our corporate partners and will transition into the private sector where they will gain another perspective and receive their student loan assistance. For our pilot cohort in 2020, we placed 8 participants across 5 federal agencies. For our second cohort starting, who will be starting throughout the summer and fall, we have placed 29 participants across 9 federal agencies, more than tripling our numbers. So we're really excited about the momentum of this program, and we really look forward to scaling it up even more in the future. So as part of the program, we've developed a comprehensive 2-year framework that will augment the on-the-job experiences and technical training that the participants will receive. So it's not enough to have technical knowledge in this day and age. Leaders really need communication skills, they need emotional intelligence, and they need to know how to grow their career. The Leadership Development Framework in CTI sets the program apart because we are not just training cybersecurity workers, we are training future cybersecurity leaders. So the framework's vision is to help participants learn critical leadership and communication skills to help them in their careers in this field. Throughout the 2-year program, we will conduct 8 sessions spread throughout their time in the public sector. As mentioned, mentorship will happen throughout the entire time. Topics of these sessions vary, but should be timely as they go through their experience in the program, and each session builds on what has come before. So in year 1, participants receive an orientation to kick off their learning. This orientation acclimates them to this new environment in the federal government and focuses on how they can set short and long-term goals and lead at their level. This also introduces them to the technical training that they'll receive from CyberVista. The following sessions throughout the year will focus on building relationships, communication skills, and finally innovation as they complete year 1 and think about how to be even more productive now that they are fully integrated into their office and agency. In year 2, they begin to shift from understanding the public side to understanding how the public and private sectors work together. They should start to build their network with each other and with key stakeholders in the program and begin the transition to the private sector and beyond. We want to help them understand their different career paths and how to best get to success on this path. At the end of the program, we want to hear from them what skills they've developed, what impact they've had in their agencies, and celebrate their accomplishments individually and as a cohort. And then as they complete their time, we want them to play the role of ambassadors to future cohorts and potential candidates by serving as speakers and supporting recruiting efforts at colleges and universities. A strong alumni network is important in order to sustain the momentum of building these talent pipelines and future leaders who will better understand and improve the relationships between these 2 important sectors. So to learn more about the program, visit cybertalentinitiative.org. If you have any questions about the program, contact me at the email listed here. And I'm happy to take your questions during the Q&A portion later in the session. Thanks, and I'll turn it over now to our colleagues at 18F. Once I stop sharing.
Awesome, thank you so much, Rick. I really appreciate the themes in there of mentoring and really helping people learning how to lead. I am so excited to be here today. My name is Amy Ishida. I am a designer at 18F, and I just want to really thank everyone for being here. To kick us off, I'm going to connect this back to an idea that I actually picked up from our partners at CMS, which is computers are great at math. You actually need people for organizational transformation. And so today I'm really excited to hand over the mic to do most of the talking to our partners from CMS who are doing just that. So for a little bit of background on CMS, on the part of CMS that is doing this work, I'm gonna hand it over to Nick.
Great, thanks Amy. Hi everyone. So my name is Nick Garitakis. I'm a Deputy Division Director within the Center for Medicaid and CHIP Services, CMS. But all that really means is I'm part of our awesome Medicaid Enterprise Systems team. What is our Medicaid Enterprise Systems team, you might ask? Well, that's our team that is responsible for boldly going where no government Medicaid team has gone before. What does that actually look like? Well, we have oversight authority for about $10 billion worth of IT projects per year. That's initiatives across all 56 states and territories. And that 10 billion is a lot, but it's worth remembering that Medicaid is the biggest insurer in the country, covers 75 million adults, families, children, everybody in between. And it takes a pretty massive IT infrastructure to ensure people can sign up for benefits, doctors can get paid for services, health utilization data flows, and a whole host of other health innovation type projects. So we partnered with 18F to actually really help us improve and reshape our government oversight model, what it can look like, but actually more about what it can actually do or what it actually does. So about 2 years ago, we transitioned our organization to put our team, the state officers that you're going to hear from today, Rick Melndez and Karenza Love, at the center of each of our interactions with our state partners. So these are some of our leading state officers on the team, and they're really at the center of this organizational change and expertise development. So breaking this down a little bit further, we set up a thing called learning cohorts. And these learning cohorts is where we wanted to actually do something different around how we could engage with our team, our state officers, and foster an environment of expertise development, AKA a cohort environment that actually counted as work. Not something that had to be fit in between meetings or after hours or any of that sort of wonky business. But like, no, this is actual work. It is self-development. It is building that cohort of learning. And that was new for us in this whole style of engagement. So I'm going to pass it over to Matt, who's going to talk a little bit about the State Officer MD basics. Matt?
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. So my name is Matt Jaden. I came to 18F Engineering after about 15 years as college faculty, where my area of research was around the teaching and learning of novice programmers. So the State Officer MD course that was co-authored with Princess Ojaku at 18F. She's part of our content strategy team. We focused on two things. We were really interested in developing a course that would build trust amongst the learning cohort and foster a culture of questioning, more than content and policy, but a culture of questioning with regards to IT project oversight. So the course is structured around a project health rubric, which you can see a little piece of here on the screen. And then we developed a standalone lesson for each element of that rubric, where there's something that you might look at in terms of a project, and then a red, green, yellow indicator as to how things are going. At CMS, we piloted the course over 8 weeks with materials being delivered online, and we had weekly facilitated conversations via Zoom. And so that's what you see here. And you can see Princess in the top middle, and additional members of the team, and some you'll recognize in this video here. So Princess and I designed, the materials were designed to be flexible. The lessons can be leveraged piecemeal, or they can be organized into short courses. So if you want to use this material, it's all free, open, and online. We'll place a link in the chat later. And Princess and I designed each lesson to try and include roughly 1 hour of independent reading, viewing, or reflection, followed by about 1 hour of facilitated full group discussion. So that's the course, and we're not going to dwell there because there's people we really want to hear from, and we're hoping Karenza can get in. She's been having difficulties getting back into Hopin, but Rick is here and Nick is here, so we want to ask some questions. So I'm going to share and bring everybody back into the Zoom. Wait, no, don't leave, Matthew. Just stop sharing. Stop sharing. There we go. So here we are. Amy.
So we're going to hand the mic more over to the folks who participated both as learners and are now as facilitators. I see Rick here, and we'll keep an eye out for Karenza, fingers crossed. Rick, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role?
Sure. Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rick Melndez. I'm actually a what they called an MES, Medicaid Enterprise Systems State Officer, which basically means it's just a legal title, which basically means that I do everything Medicaid, IT Medicaid. We oversee a lot of the different projects and initiatives that are happening in the states that have to do with technology and that are, with the sole outcome of improving the Medicaid program and providing the best Medicaid services for the participants. There's roughly 38, 39 of us Each of us have between 1 and 2 states. And, obviously the bigger states really require more than one state officer. And, we all come in with different backgrounds, everything from project management through actually Medicaid program management through even we have pharmacists and different type of skill sets.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that context. And so, Rick, I'm curious, what has been your experience with learning opportunities, especially those around government, before participating in the learning cohort?
Oh my gosh. Let's talk about death by PowerPoint and your typical learning opportunities where you read a lot, you fall asleep for half of it, and then you come back and you have to reread the first part that you read. Typically one-way communication with lots of slides, and a lot of times we have to go back and reread it again and just ask a lot of questions because otherwise you're not going to get it. So that's a typical experience, at least for me.
And how is that different when you think about the state officer MD learning experience? How is it different, and what did you value most about that experience?
Well, you know what? It was a different trip, definitely. Matt and Princess, they put together a show with that course, and it made it nice because we knew that we were not in for just your typical learning experience. There was a lot of information that they provided, but it wasn't really homework. It wasn't really assignments. It was more, a background to getting a better understanding as to what we were getting ourselves into, and then to put it all into perspective within the own confines of our own projects and try to understand where we were going. We did have a lot of group interaction with our own fellow state officers that were in the course. We were able to discuss, and put it into perspective, the different lessons, and put it into perspective into how it applies in our own projects and how it helps us to understand the health of the projects and the different challenges that our project teams are facing. So it was refreshing. It was refreshing, and it really was a good experience, I think, for everybody.
So what about that transition, right? Like, I was a professor for 15 years, but now you're in charge. So what is that? But I mean, what is that trend? Humor aside, what has that transition been like to being a facilitator with your team? And maybe Nick, what is it like, having that capacity expansion internal, like in-house?
Certainly, the transition was actually pretty easy, and I'll say this really to give you credit, you and Princess, because you guys really laid it out for us. You gave us not only great course materials that we could follow, but you even had sort of a roadmap that we could follow for each of the lessons. And so what we did is, we would just meet together, the three of us with Ron from 18F, and we would just talk about what we were going to talk about the following week, and we would just follow the roadmap that you had laid out for us. And then we would basically talk about how we could interject some of our information, some of our experience, and make it all worthwhile for the attendance, and not make it really facilitator centric, but really state officer centric discussions, because that's the value of the learning cohorts, really.
And Matt, to your other question about capacity building, so I think we've seen that in twofold or two key ways, which is there's the content of the learning cohort itself, this health rubric, this examination of what it actually means. Remember, like the $10 billion of investment in projects and all the great things that the states and territories are doing. So there's this just richer and deeper dive that has happened from the group discussions, from the sharing of thoughts, from this cohort environment. that has really enabled the team to dive into what it means to have a healthy project, what it means to like actually gauge that health. And yeah, it's like state officer MD, but we always went back to that analogy of, you know, you don't always want to go to the doctor when you're sick. You want to go for your regular preventative checkups. And those sort of analogies and things like that really came forward. So there's that capacity building in the content itself, but then the other side, just like Rick was saying about being a facilitator, like there's this whole other capacity of, like, we have experts and team members now that are training and building, you know, secondary, tertiary, whatever the fourth version of that word is, style cohorts that we see to sort of unfold. And it's sort of this incredible blooming of learning and culture that we're really trying to cultivate. And that's been pretty staggering to see.
Yep.
I have hints at this, the next question, which is, you know, looking forward, how do you see this, you know, either from the content perspective and from the organizational perspective of the learning cohorts, how do you see that impacting the state officer community in the long term? And this could be for both.
Yeah. You know, for me, I actually see this as something that is going to be ongoing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that Carenza and I are going to be the facilitators. It may be a different group next time. It's always good to bring in the fresh blood, different perspectives, different ideas, different ways of running things. But this type of opportunity is really about growing the collective knowledge and the community knowledge that we have as state officers, because that only makes us better. It makes us better in our trade. It makes us better in how we serve the states, and really it makes the Medicaid program better. It makes it better for the participants, which is the overall objective really of all of this. These projects that we oversee, they can be pretty complicated. They can be pretty complex. They can be pretty intimidating, especially for somebody who's brand new coming into the fold. And so it's very, very, it's beneficial to have this type of opportunities, to give them that idea, and to give them the perspective so that they don't get overwhelmed with the work that we got to do.
And so I think I go back, there's one of the quotes that Carenza, who's our other facilitator, had said about this is that the transition from being a cohort member and learning to facilitator, that was sort of a shift from the specific, like asking a question and getting a specific answer. What is this policy thing? How does this approach? Should we look at this? And like getting that specific answer, to suddenly a shift around, well, what are the different perspectives that our teachers have around these initiatives, around these projects? And as that cohort talks and explores those various perspectives, that leads to this sort of richer and deeper analysis of the results. It sort of leads to this richer and deeper picture. It's not shortcutting it to, oh, hey, here's this specific answer, and now we can move on to the next thing. It's like elevated the game, and I think like that's where we're seeing this as an opportunity to just build upon long term, and hopefully, and Rick will keep me honest, like we can never return to the death by PowerPoint situation again, right? Like where unless we're showing like cat pictures or team building pictures or something like that, but you know, shift the focus for how we learn and how we tackle a specific topic, because there's this repeatability around this culture of learning and this cohort of folks that sort of go through this experience together. And whether that's a new regulation that comes out, new statute on the state side or federal side, like there's this whole realm of learning that has in a lot of ways, especially in our organization historically, been sort of compartmentalized to, oh, here's a reg, we're going to talk about that and put that out there, as opposed to this totally like flipped perspective of building that culture of learning into our folks, and our folks then just taking it and running with it.
I love the idea of a culture of learning within your organization, and that both influencing the way that training works and the way that people interact with their other partners outside of the team, with state partners. And I think that mindset shift is very different than what we see in a lot of agencies. I have one last question for this segment, and it is, if other agencies wanted to do this and could only replicate one thing from the learning cohorts, what would you suggest they take?
Okay, you know what? For this one, I'm actually going to give Karenza, and I'm going to read her response. Too bad she wasn't able to join us. Karenza has been a huge part of this effort. But what she says is, I suggest replicating the rubric we use in the course for evaluation of projects. This will prompt us to take all the knowledge we have about our projects and articulate the project at a high level. In essence, contact Karenza and myself, and we will walk you through it. It is a good tool. It is a good course. It is something that will benefit your organization.
And if I can be so bold as to break Amy's rule, I'm going to say two things. It's one, the content itself, and like Rick was saying, it's not CMS or Medicaid IT project specific. Like everybody, whatever there is, 100 people in this session work in IT projects. Oh, and Karenza popped in. Excellent. All of those folks work in IT projects, so it is not CMS specific or Medicaid specific. We just find ourselves working in a lot of projects and a lot of spaces. And so, I would say the material in terms of health rubric stuff is very, very universally applicable. But Karenza, I'll pass it to you. Oh, but we can't hear you. Oh, everybody can get the sentiment though. So the other thing that I will add, if the first one was the material itself, the other add, and I'm breaking Amy's rule here of just the one thing, but it is, it is changing the model on a culture of learning, especially in the government. I think like we got this bad rep of PowerPoints or manuals or whatever, and making time that counts as actual work, like it's during your regular work day, for learning and self-improvement, like that is paramount. And I would definitely say that's the biggest takeaway that I would hit on.
Hey, Nick, and if I can add, do not call any of the assignments or readings, don't call them homework. Don't call it homework, because then the staff will not do it, okay? Just call it, hey, it's for your own good, okay? If you want to read it, go ahead and read it and all that. But what we found out is if we just go ahead and encourage them to get together and review the materials and all that, that's all they need. That's all the encouragement they need.
Okay. Karenza, feel free to do you have audio? Oh no, we don't have audio yet. Okay, we'll keep working on that. But Matt, do you want to bring up the deck as we close this section out, and then we'll move into Q&A for both segments. Awesome. Okay, so because the theme of this is all about the people behind change, I just wanted to make sure this will be quick. I'm not going to read everything, but there's a bunch of fingerprints on this work, and so wanted to just give a quick shout out to all the people that were involved. And if you want to learn more on the next slide, we are going to drop these links into the chat. Yeah, there will be familiar names for folks that have been around on that slide. We're going to drop these links in the chat so you don't need to worry about doing a mad dash to remember all of them. But the materials that we used are public. We made the generic version, and so the link is in the chat. Also, if you are interested in working with 18F in any capacity, we have a public benefits portfolio. The de-risking guide is a really great resource for state folks. And also, we are hiring, obligatory plug for joining the team and working with amazing people like the folks you've seen today. So that wraps up our like talking portion of this. We definitely will. We'd love to know if there are questions that folks have. I know there's a Q&A, and then Matt, yeah, if you want to unshare your screen, the folks in the partnership can hop back in for the Q&A section.
Amy, do you want to, because we didn't appoint a facilitator, would you like to take a look at the Q&A and?
Sure, I can. All right, so yes, please add any additional questions into the Q&A. I will be looking there. There was a question in the chat from the first round, so I do want to make sure that gets pulled in for the partnership that was about state, state stakeholders. So I want to give you all a chance before I dive in about these learning methods to pull back and say, well, how about state partners for the partnership?
Sure, I can take a stab at this, and then Rick or Wanda, welcome you to jump in. So we are a nonprofit focused on the federal government, and as you all know, that's a massive mission to try and support the federal government. So we are primarily federal focused. We are continuing to do some work. Right now, we're on the West Coast engaging with some state and local government there, trying to figure out how do we improve those coordinations, but we're really federal focused. I think a lot of the work we do could be translated to the state and local level, but we're primarily focused at the federal level.
Yeah, and that's right. And in terms of the Cybersecurity Talents Initiative, the only thing I'll add about that is that we are federally focused, but we do place folks all over the country, so they don't have to be in the DC area to be part of the program. We do have some opportunities in other parts of the country, but it's not with state or local governments, it's still with the federal government.
All right, thank you. And there's a question here on, let's see, what are some candid political environmental considerations needed for leading large-scale tech and innovation change? And how does this support or encourage delivery on different levels of government? I think this is an open question. I'm not sure if this is targeted to a specific group, so.
I could say one thing, from our work on the federal innovation side, I mean, one piece of the framework that especially comes out when you're talking about political priorities and transition between administrations is this idea of making sure you're tying these initiatives to the priorities of the agency. So right now, there's a big focus for the Biden administration on equity, climate, making the economy in recovery from COVID-19. So making sure you're figuring out how to message the connection between the work you're doing and those priorities helps to unstick some of the maybe reluctance to change. So as much as there's alignment between those, the more successful things will be.
One small thing that I'll jump in, and my colleagues have other things to add, is I have a colleague who said at some point during the transition, I don't care who's in the White House, I work for the same people every day. And so obviously we all care who's in the White House, that's a part of our lives, but I thought that was a really perspective. And so when we thought about how we were developing materials to support the state officers and foster that environment of questioning, it was that question of who, right? And we serve the people, and officers are doing, the resources they're shepherding have really massive impact for people for whom it matters a great deal. So in that regard, yes, the political climate can impact the work, but at the same time also, the people don't change year to year.
To just quickly pile on, I will also say, when we work in something like our learning cohort, it's done with an effort towards our partnership model, our Fed-state partnership model in the Medicaid sphere. And so anything that we do here, we actually hope is transferable and is something that all of our state partners can take away or see how that plays out. I think Matt linked out like the actual curriculum or the course materials, because again, like it's not unique to how CMS as a federal agency does this oversight model. It's way more applicable to just product delivery in sort of a civic space, maybe just in general. And so it's a little bit of like, well, if we can do that and we think it's of benefit, then maybe other states or other municipalities or whoever could also benefit from that.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna move us into, there's a multi-upvoted questions. Thank you everyone for adding questions and voting on them. So there's one here that has noticing a through line about these talks that is not just about capacity but building momentum. What are some of the ways that we approach agencies or programs that have heavy inertia to start change?
So for our cohort model, it was start small. We have a team of about 40, 50 people, and we didn't say we're going to do the cohort, we're going to do like 8 cohorts, and this is our new like learning model for everything. We said we're going to do 1, and we did 1 with these very folks here. And if there was fruit that came out of that, like if it was beneficial and we were seeing like, oh, this is really cool, now we can scale it to 2. And if we've got our folks that went through it the first time that are facilitating it, which is even a greater story, then it was like, well, maybe next time we can do 3 and we'll figure out what our capacity is. But there's definitely a strong potential barrier to say, oh, we're going to implement this whole thing across the board. But if we want to group 8 people together and do a cohort on that, that's very palatable, or much more palatable, I would say.
Yeah, and this is Rick. In regard to CTI and the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative, I would agree with Nick. I think I like that we had a cohort. Our first cohort was 8 people, so where we can kind of test out the leadership development program, make sure that things are working. Now that we're going to have almost 30, it's going to be very interesting to see how we translate what we learned into the smaller cohort into that bigger cohort. And then it's going to be a very different experience. So I'm excited to kind of see how that happens and what they learn and what they can bring back to their agencies as well. I will say once we had the cohort for CTI, it made it a lot easier for agencies to point to a success, or it's easier to get the champions for then the agencies to also want a participant, a cybersecurity entry-level talent in their agency. So it's an easier sell to them to see that this program is working, that they're bringing in really talented folks, and to hopefully gain that momentum to scale up.
Awesome. All right, Karenza, I don't know if your audio is working, but I think this is a good question for you. Oh no! Well, everyone gets to see your lovely, beautiful self. So thank you for for gracing us. the question here is, what tactics do you use to adapt to different learning styles in the cohort model? Are there mechanisms like surveys, polls, or other things that you all use to elicit feedback from members that are participating?
Yeah, we obviously had not only the Microsoft Teams chat going, the whole week, posting different little questions and, different little comments and telling them about the lessons and this and that. But even at the end of each lesson, we, Matt and Princess had actually put a group of survey questions. And all of them were basically the same question, but it was, what did you learn? What should we keep? What should we throw away and stuff like that? Just to understand what benefits the participants were getting and what we could adjust for the following week's lesson. So it really made it very efficient for us, because we could take those surveys when we had our weekly facilitators meeting and go over them and attack them the way that we needed to attack them, and maybe come up with ideas of how we can get some of the other people involved that were not maybe getting involved, or bring in different information that needed to be brought in. So yeah, we did do that type of work.
And this is Rick again. With CTI, we did a pre-orientation and post-orientation surveys to see if they learned everything over those 2 days that we were with them. And then after each of our sessions for the leadership development program, we do ask them to fill out a survey to get an evaluation of each session. So definitely always looking to improve them and make them better.
All right. This one's getting upvoted as we speak. How is the rubric integrated into performance management? So thinking about both positive and negative impacts to learning and behavior tied to performance management. Curious, Nick, you're probably the best person to speak to this.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just say at the outset, we are specifically not linking the health rubric to performance management. So there's other vehicles. We have a certification process for systems. There's an approval process for funding and contracts, procurement vehicles, that sort of stuff. There's even ongoing reporting and metrics and things like that that has to happen as just part of oversight operations. But for the rubric, we wanted to shy away from it being actually like the thing, you have to have this, that, or the other. We wanted to create it as a tool, as a toolbox, really, that our team could use, or states could use, or whoever could use, to assess how those projects are going. And so we were actually kind of cognizant about that distinction of, hey, we don't want to create another like certification criteria or something like that. We want to empower the people that we have, the great people that we have, to use these different tools in the toolbox to figure out, is a project going well? Is a project, need an adjustment? What does that look like? So this wasn't trying to supplant any of the existing oversight. Those still exist, and they exist for a reason. But this was much more focused on that culture of learning and getting our team up, to that point where they're using it just like you would, a toolbox for building something.
Yeah, if I can add, we were not really, during the sessions, we were not really concentrating on examining the rubric and really going down the path of discussing the individual projects and how should we score them and this and that. In essence, that wasn't really the objective of the course. We wanted really to have valid discussions with the SOs so that they understood really what were some of the areas that they should be looking for, how can they really assess the health of their projects, and really, have valid feedback that allows them to really understand where they are in the project. It's not necessarily, we didn't say, SO, let's go ahead and go look at your project, let's go ahead and grade it on the rubric. That wasn't what we were doing. That wasn't the intent of the course.
I just feel like it's worth underscoring because it's just an interesting question of like that. You make something like a rubric, or you help make something like a rubric. You think like, oh, I'm going to start using this to like measure and do all these other things, and it's just, and we definitely had to specifically change that thought process and like, no, it's a learning tool. It's a culture of learning. Like it's that sort of thing. If we want to measure something, we'll go a different path. And like I said, we've got other avenues there, but it's like resisting that urge to use it in that way.
Death by PowerPoint, Nick.
And then there's another question here that I think would be great, folks for the partnership too. Were there any assumptions that were invalidated through these processes? Can you give examples of anything that changed or will change as you've developed this?
I can honestly say that the SOs, especially in the second group, the ones that we facilitated, they now value the benefits of seeing demos. Demos, not memos, like Matt puts on the rubric, and so now you see a huge interest in being involved in the demos that the states are doing. Again, because we're oversight, we're not even at the program management level, I would say. We're obviously not project managers. We're not at the ground level, but we do have a big responsibility in this project, and so for us to not even be seeing the demos of the products that are being produced, it's really I'm not going to say unfortunate, but it's really not allowing us to do the job as efficiently as we should be doing it. And I think that's one of the mindsets that was changed with a lot of the SOs that went into class.
And for me, I would just add that I think what we weren't expecting, obviously, was being completely virtual. So I think I'm excited to get back in person. Building these cohorts and building those relationships in person are going to be very different since our first year was just virtual. So I think, obviously, we'd prefer to be in person.
Wonderful. All right. Well, it is 59, 1 minute till. I do want to thank the partnership for really joining in with us on this session. I think it's really valuable to approach both from a leadership development standpoint and on a staff and capacity, really looking at these different models for developing folks who are leading change in government to deliver services for the public ultimately. And so really, thank you all so much for joining our session. Thank you all for participating and bringing your knowledge. I so appreciate the opportunity to share with you all. Please take care.